Hey, fellow mathers. Before we get into this episode, we want to share with you how you can get access to free content, professional learning that will keep your students engaged and doing the math that matters. Get ready to go to this link, mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge.
That's right. Registration is open for the free Math is Figureoutable Challenge that's starting May 15th and runs to the 17th at 7 p.m. Central. We're going to have 3 nights jam-packed with learning and routines that you can take straight to your classroom.
In these challenges, we have a great time. We do some math, talk about classroom experiences, give away super cool bonuses and prizes. You won't just walk away with routines that are naturally engaging and encourage your students to think mathematically. You'll also have a chance to win over $6,000 worth in prizes, including a few virtual PD sessions for your school. I'll be joined by my wonderful co-host Kim and special guest Jenna Labe.
You can register at mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge for a fantastic learning experience. That's mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. Now on to the show.
Hey, fellow mathematicians, welcome to the podcast where math is figureoutable. I'm Pam Harris.
And I'm Kim Montague.
And we make the case that mathematizing is not about mimicking. Goodness heavens. Let me try that again. And we make the case that mathematizing is not about mimicking steps or rote memorizing facts, but it's about thinking and reasoning, about creating and using mental relationships. People don't realize we re-record this every time. We take the strong stance that not only are algorithms not particularly helpful in teaching, but that mimicking algorithms actually keeps students from being the mathematicians they can be. We answer the question, if not algorithms and step-by-step procedures, then what?
Okay, so today we are wrapping up our series on the major important strategies for each of the 4 operations. And listen, we have been giving you this amazing download, this free ebook that has all kinds of goodies in it. And we want to take just a minute to mention how we anticipate how we think that you will use that or not use that. So what we've said before and that we want to reiterate is we don't think that you're going to run off a copy of each of these for your students. We don't think that it is something, please don't. Please don't. We don't think that you're going to.
In fact, Kim, before you go on, sometimes when we have a teacher handout at a workshop, I will kind of jokingly say, so right up on the top of this, write not for student use.
Yeah.
And it always cracks me up a little bit because people will dutifully write not for student. And I just say that every time, like, here's your hint. This is not for student use. This is for teacher use. This is teacher learning, teacher understanding, and then you're going to use it as you teach students.
Yeah. So absolutely. This is really about your learning, and it's really an opportunity for you to study and to say, man, which of these strategies do I find myself regularly using? Do I understand each of the strategies? Could I find problems where I would use each of the strategies? I really feel like a way I would use it is I would study it, I'd put it away, and I would say to myself, I'm going to dive into Math Strat Chat. I'm going to dive into looking for problems in the world. And then after a while, I think I'd pull that booklet back out and I would say, oh, I use 5S-10 a lot. I use the over strategy a lot, but I'm not really finding myself using equivalent ratio a lot. Let me refamiliarize with myself with that. Let me put it away. Let me focus on that particular strategy. Yeah.
Go do a lot of problem strings with that with your students so that you get used to numbers that it makes sense to do that particular strategy. You build those relationships in your brain. You're building it in your student's brain. All of a sudden that strategy is going to ping for you because those relationships are created now mentally.
Yeah. Another note is that for teachers and leaders, we want you to build yourselves alongside students. This is not the thing where you have to own every single strategy and then you can teach strategies through problem strings. You are
not that,
right? It's not be perfect, know all the things before you can actually get started. But there is a little bit of some relief maybe about knowing just a bit more, at least owning the fact that there are alternative strategies so that you can be open to listening to your students and figuring out which relationships are worth chasing down.
Yeah, that's really well said. Because when you know that these are the major ones, then you have sort of a sense as you're listening to students. You're going to be able to listen You're going to be able to hear what they're doing, the relationships they're using a little bit easier because
Yeah.
you have created those relationships. And let's say that you don't have them all yet. As you listen to students, you're going to create them better in yourself. But you're starting with this notion that there are these major relationships. And like Kim said, then you'll have a better sense, and you'll learn more as you go which strategies you want to chase down, which ones are going to be more fruitful for everybody to compare to and listen to and construct in class.
Yeah. And if you're listening for the first time and you're like, wait, I don't know what you're talking about, you are going to want to go right now to download that ebook, that resource, that fabulous download at mathisfigureoutable.com/big, because it is incredible.
Because it is big and incredible.
Yep.
And yeah, BIG. Great place to go. And if you'd like more experience in creating these mental relationships in your own head, because that's our favorite way to do it, then join us ready tomorrow. If you were listening to the podcast on the day it came out on May 10th, that's when this podcast drops, then you can join us tomorrow, and then you can change math class challenge. Begins May 11th in 2022. You need to register at mathisfigureoutable.com/change. Mathisfigureoutable.com/change is where you register for the You Can Change Math Class Challenge on May 11th, where we will continue to help you develop the most important strategies for students and you to learn so that computation becomes a natural outcome. That just naturally let things ping in your brain and bam, you are computing with the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kim, we thought it would be fun today to launch a fairly gnarly problem. And when I say gnarly, it's one of those that if you look at, you're like, blah, like the numbers just don't look particularly, maybe at first glance, don't particularly look all that like lovely. You know, if I say, hey, Kim, here's a really hard problem, 100 times 49, you're really like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's easy. Or like readily. So these are problems that are not like that. They are gnarly. You look at them, you're going to have to like think for a second, like what could be your strategy? And in doing that, we thought we would parse out the fact that all of the major strategies we've been talking about for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, how they sort of all come together. We've solved lots of problems on the podcast, but we've been a little less explicit about all of the things we're thinking about when we solve them. So today we're going to attempt to be really explicit.
Okay.
Like explicit.
Say all the things.
Say all the things. Yeah. Like get our, I have the other meaning of explicit in my head right now. What am I thinking? What'd you say?
A metacognitive, and then like say it out loud.
Yes. Very metacognitive. Think about our thinking. All right. So Kim, here is your question. How would you solve this lovely, because it is lovely, a lovely problem. It took me a minute to come up with this problem because I really wanted one that the people are going to listen to and go, blah. 49 times 67. Dun, dun, dun. Oh,
okay,
yeah.
just wrote it down.
Oh, yeah.
49 times 67.
Oh, yeah, because Einstein said paper is for the things you need to remember, and your brain is for thinking.
I'm thinking. I'm looking at it for a second.
Yeah.
So this is me saying that. Okay.
And that's legal, right? Let's be really clear. It is legal. I remember while you're thinking, when I was the math student, I knew in my heart of hearts that what I was supposed to do was see a problem and instantly know what I was supposed to do. Yeah. And we're saying not true. In fact, what mathematicians do is mathematicians look at a problem and they consider, they play around with things. So Kim, what were you just thinking?
I was looking at 49 and 67 and I was wondering which one I want to mess with.
Say more.
So I don't love 67.
When you say mess with, I'm going to be really explicit. You were wondering, do you want to find 49 67s
or 67 49s?
Thank you. Okay.
And 49 is near some things that I like. So I'm thinking that I want to mess with 49 67s rather than 67 49s because I can alter that 49 to my liking. Like I can mess with it a little bit more readily.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with 49 67s. Okay.
We shall let you.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm actually thinking I want to do 167s. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second, if you'll let me.
Mm-hmm.
So I know 167s because I know how to scale up by 10 and then by 10 again. I'm going to say that 167s is 6,700. So Is that clear enough? We good on
Yep.
that one?
Yep.
Okay.
No, that's good. Yeah.
So then the reason I went to 100 is because I wanted to eventually get to 50 67s. And so I went way over so that I could do 5 is half a 10. I get 50 67s.
That makes sense.
So then I know that I need a half the 6,700.
Because you have the 100 to get to 50.
Mm-hmm. And I actually went from left to right there, and I halved 6,000 to get 3,000. And I halved 700 to get 350.
So half of 6,700 is
3,350.
So if I can pause you for just a second, because I wonder if listeners might find it noteworthy that as you're talking, I have written down a ratio table.
Oh,
So I have 1 to 67,
okay.
100 to 6,700,
Mm-hmm.
and 50 to 3,350.
Interesting.
What do
Okay.
you have on your paper?
I wrote down equations, actually.
I can see that. I've seen you do that before.
Yeah.
So you have like 100 times 67 equals 6,700?
And then 50 times 60. Yeah.
Okay.
And as I'm saying what I'm saying, I'm underlining to make sure that I've been clear enough with my words.
All right. So you're now at
All right.
50 67s.
Yeah. And so then I know that I have 50 67s, and I'm going to just go down a 67 down on my paper.
Why?
I'm going to subtract because I need 49 67s, and I already have 50 of them. So I just need 40 of them. And so I can subtract 167. Yeah.
From
3,350.
Cool. And how are you going to subtract 67
So
from 3,350?
At that point, I subtracted 50 to get to a friendly number. So I started with 3,350 and I subtracted the 50. I actually wrote a number line, subtract 50 to get to 3,300. But I still need to subtract, my total to subtract was 67 and I did 50. So I still need to subtract 17. And so I'm at 3,300 and I need to subtract 17. And at that point, I just knew it was 3,283.
And how do you know?
Well, yeah. So I know my combinations of 100 really well because I play I Have You Need a lot. But I could have subtracted 10 and then subtracted 7 if I wasn't sure.
So 3,300 subtract 10 would be 3,290. Subtract 3 more would be 3,283. And you also could have subtracted from that 3,300, you could have subtracted 20. What is that?
Over. Oh, you want me to do that? So 3,300 minus 20 will be 3,280, 3,280. And then because I've subtracted too much, I did 3 too much, then I could add 3 to the 3,280 and get 3,283.
So you could use sort of an over subtraction strategy to do that.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that 49 67s is
3,283.
And in solving that, you used the 5 is half a 10 multiplication strategy
over
multiplication strategy. And then you used partners of 100 to do the subtraction, but you could have done an over subtraction
first I did
strategy.
remove to a friendly number.
That's true.
Well, I actually, interestingly, because of what I had, I removed a friendly number that also got me to a friendly number.
Sure enough. Yep.
And then we could have done over subtract, or I knew partners of 100. Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody finds that interesting, that we just kind of wanted to do a problem where we sort of parsed out all the things that we're thinking about. But Kim, let's be clear. Like, if you hadn't had to say all that stuff, do you think how many? Go ahead.
It would have been much quicker. Not that speed is everything, but you slowing me down to make me say all the things might feel to our listeners like, wow, that took a really long time.
You really had to slog through all that. Wow, that was a lot of effort.
But no, it would not have been.
So if I may, in actuality, you looked at a problem and you said 49 67s. I'd rather do that than 67 49s because you knew 49 was almost 50, and bam, 50 is half of 100. So if you found 100 of them, halved it to get 50 of them, took one of them away, and you're done.
Yeah.
And in reality, that was very efficient and far fewer steps than if you would have done all of the single digit multiplication that would have been needed to do the traditional algorithm.
Yeah.
With all those opportunities for errors, and also the opportunity that you could have been using additive reasoning or at best multiplicative reasoning with single digits, and instead you're using multiplicative and additive reasoning as you quickly, efficiently, and using sophisticated strategies, we're able to solve what I think is a pretty gnarly problem.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Can I tell you that you just said less steps. I think that if you had said you have to do the traditional algorithm, I would have been very uncomfortable. Not because I don't love it, but because it has been so long since I have that I would not have known if my answer was correct. Like, I feel so
Ah,
sure about the fact that because I'm thinking about the entire amount that I'm dealing with.
the magnitudes involved.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I would be very unsure whether my answer was correct using an algorithm.
So it's not like you couldn't have done it. You could have done the
Yeah.
steps and done all the things and whatever. But at the end of it, you're like, God, if I would have made just one little error in any of that, the magnitude of your answer could be completely crazy off.
Right.
But instead, you're like, no, I'm really clear.
Mhm.
6,700, 3,350, just one less 67. We're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fascinating to me, that sometimes teachers get so upset about how their kids' answers aren't reasonable. And my suggestion is we've taken them out of reasoning land to begin with. If we stay in reasoning land, we're so much more confident that the answer is reasonable because we're reasoning the entire way along. Nicely done. Anything else before we do this next part?
Nope, I think I'm good.
So one of the things I wanted to emphasize as we sort of wrap up our series on this idea that there are these major relationships that given if a person has developed the relationship so that these strategies are they own these major strategies, then they can solve any problem that's reasonable to solve that a calculator. That as we do that, I just want to bring out the point that too many places what we see are people stop with the partials. We have programs out there and whole sort of fields of thought where, okay, give kids some conceptual understanding that we're going to do partial sums, partial differences, partial products, partial quotients. And once we've done those, okay, now our next step, bam, is the algorithm. And we either then see kids doing these really inefficient partials. Partials are good and they're a necessary starting place, but they can't be the ending place. But also the ending place is not the traditional algorithm. The ending place, and it's really, I should even say the ending place because we just keep getting more and more sophisticated. That after we've got the partials, then we continue to build kids' sophistication. We continue to help them think about bigger and bigger jumps, bigger and fewer jumps, bigger and fewer chunks. And as they do that, their brains literally have more and more neural connections that then we can build on as we want to think even more multiplicatively as we build proportional reasoning.
Yeah.
So we cannot stop with just the partials. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I want to give you a lot of props, a lot of credit to my thinking and to a lot of people's thinking in that, because I know that you spent a lot of time looking at all that's like kind of put out in the world, and that you have been very clear for a very long time that either the work was conceptually based and just kind of stopped at partials, or that it was all about the algorithm in the end. Right. Yeah. And I remember you've come to me and asked me how I've solved stuff, and, I've given you kind of my gut response, but then you have taken that and you've asked like all the people and you've known that we need to generalize and create a system and like this cohesive plan so that there's no holes, because your expertise, started with high school. And so you knew and have known that like all this work that we do in elementary has to be carried through. It's gotta make sense in higher math. And I appreciate what you've given to me, but also to the world in that arena.
Yeah, I was really clear that we had to think through, is this just about getting kids kind of some conceptual stuff and now they just repeat these memorized steps? Or can we leave kids in partials and call that good enough? And I mean, I knew instantly that wasn't the answer because I knew where higher math went. Like I knew we needed to get more sophisticated than just partials. Then we were going to have to end up at algorithms. And so thank you. I had to look at and do all the research to make sure, like, what are those major relationships? And if could we really, and sure enough, we can, we can identify the major relationships that lead to these major strategies. And then we can give students any problem that's reasonable to solve without a calculator. And not only can the kids solve that problem as efficiently as a traditional algorithm, most of the time more efficiently than any of the traditional algorithms, But more importantly, they are building the relationships and connections so that they are thinking and reasoning more sophisticatedly, because then upon that, we can then reason even more sophisticatedly. If we don't have this system, then we leave kids either too unsophisticated, and then we're stuck at higher math. We can't build on what they didn't build earlier. And so I feel like that's really important. And Kim, as you bring that up, I want to mention that there's a follower that we have on Twitter. I might slaughter your name, Tad. I'm sorry, Tad Watanabe, I think, is fantastic. And we really appreciate the fact that he listens to the podcast. He writes a blog post back, and because it pokes on some of the stuff that we say, we have these great conversations on Twitter. Love how deeply you're thinking about all the things. One of the things that he asked is why we are emphasizing computation so much. And I kind of pushed back and I was like, are you saying that I'm only about, in fact, he said, calculation strategies as nice and useful for as nice and useful for mental calculations are only a small component of mathematics students need to learn, in his opinion. He said, in my opinion. And I said back to him, are you saying that you think I'm only about computation? Because that was kind of surprising to me, because I'm not so only about computation. But that he said back to me, I wouldn't say that you're only about computation, but a vast majority of your podcast time is about computation. I had to think about that.
Yeah.
And Kim, we talked about it, and you know what? Sure enough, it is. And let me tell you why. So there is a reason that upon first contact with me, you will hear me talk so much about computation, because if I can't convince you that it really isn't about just get some conceptual stuff and then go to algorithms, that's not mathematizing. If I can't convince you of that, then teachers are going to, and this has been my experience, teachers will look at it and say, well, Pam, your stuff is all really nice and everything, but it's not necessary. And then good people look at really good work. They look at all this stuff that's out there about building conceptual understanding, and I don't blame them. And good people will say, I mean, sure, but I don't waste my time doing that stuff, because I'm really clear that kids need algorithms to compute. And so since they need step-by-step procedures to compute, I got to spend time doing them, because if I don't, kids aren't good at them. And so I spend the time doing them. I show them to kids, make sure that kids can do the algorithms. And here's what we get. What we get is that students who are immature decision makers, immature choosers, in that moment will choose to do the algorithms. Because to be clear, those step-by-step procedures are easier than thinking. They are easier than students grappling with these big ideas, because as students grapple, that's hard and it's uncomfortable, and they have to literally create new neural connections. And that work takes effort. Immature students will say, I'd rather just do the step-by-step stuff over here. And then they will choose them. And unfortunately, that unwittingly cuts those students off from higher math. Students will immaturely make a decision going, well, I'd rather just do this easier step-by-step stuff rather than, you're making me think over here, miss. Quit making me think. And they'll unwittingly cut themselves off from higher math. And then less and less math will make sense to them. And we will continue to get what we've gotten. I feel so strongly that we need to help everybody understand what mathematics actually is. It is not just repeating these steps, because if we just repeat steps, we then cut ourselves off unwittingly from access to understanding higher math. And then all we can do is we're left with steps, and we can only solve problems that we've seen before. Kim, one of the funnest things that is happening lately, we are right now in the middle of a workshop cycle. So we have online workshops where that's where we get really dive deep into building these relationships. And I love hearing from workshop participants, because I'm active in the message boards. And I love hearing, I hear so often where participants will say things like, my brain is changing. This is the change we need. Now we can get about teaching differently because we think differently. In fact, Sarah just said, and I'm quoting, I love the idea of saying goodbye to the traditional algorithm. The more I move away from the algorithm in my class, the more successful and confident I am seeing my students become. Oh, and wow. Robert just said, it was so cool. He just said, it's still not hard. No, sorry. He said, it's still hard to not revert immediately to a standard algorithm. But, and in all caps, he wrote, but the knee-jerk reaction is wearing out. And my new math mind says, what relationships do I know that can simplify this problem to something requiring less formulaic thinking? Plus, I'm still quoting Robert, Finding relationships is more fun than any standard algorithm. To me, it's more like a puzzle to solve, not a series of dry steps. Oh, it's so much fun to listen to people who are beginning to do the transformation that I did, where all
Yeah.
of a sudden I realized, whoa, mathematics is this other world, and it is so cool. And we want to invite you into it. And that's why we're making such a big deal about computation and about these particular strategies, because if I can convince you here, then we can open up the rest of the world of real math.
Hey, speaking of workshops you just mentioned,
Oh, yeah.
we would love to invite everyone to take what we call DMR, the Developing Mathematical Reasoning Workshop. You
Totally
can find
free?
that totally free. In fact, it is at mathisfigureoutable.com/free workshop. It's so fantastic. You'll love it. And if you've already done DMR, then you should join Journey, which is your, oh gosh, what do I even say?
Our signature implementation support product. That is where
That's the
we
place to be.
join with teachers and leaders all around the world as we are all working together to teach more and more real math.
Yeah, you can find that at mathisfigureoutable.com/journey.
And we sure appreciate all of our Journey members. We have a blast with them. All right, y'all. In conclusion, it is about looking for and making use of patterns, and that creates mental relationships. And this is the most important part, that as we create those mental relationships and we get more and more clear on using those relationships to solve problems, and as we get more clear, then we call those strategies. And as we define and describe those strategies, that helps cement and make those pathways stronger. It is not about direct teaching strategies. It's about developing brains to own more and more connections and relationships, becoming more and more dense with those relationships and connections, and then solving more and more complicated problems. And the process just continues on. And that is mathematics. So if you're interested, don't forget to download the big resource, this ebook that we have written that contains all this about models and strategies versus algorithms, and what the examples of the major important strategies for all of the operations at mathisfigureoutable.com/big. And join the You Can Change Math Class Challenge at mathisfigureoutable.com/change, which starts tomorrow, May 11th. So make sure that you register. Join us on the You Can Change Math Class Challenge. It's a blast. Love meeting people from all around the world on that challenge. So if you want to learn more mathematics and refine your math teaching so that you and students are mathematizing more and more, then join the Math is Figureoutable movement and help us spread the word that math is figureoutable.
Is this like a bonus to the episode?
I don't know. We shut off the episode and Kim keeps talking and says to me, "Go. Are you going to talk? You're crying, laughing. I know.
I am. I said, do you you want to know what I was doing while you were talking there at the end? I wrote down 49 times 67 and did the traditional algorithm. And
you decided to have fun. You're just going to play with the algorithm a little bit because
to be fair, it has been. Holy cow. 15 years?
A few years.
I mean, maybe longer, since I literally wrote a traditional algorithm for multiplication. So I'm out of practice, and I wrote 49 times 67 and got it wrong. And
so I said, we got to record this. So I hit the record button. Because I'm like, Kim, I want to hear. What did you do wrong?
So here's what I did wrong.
Like, you don't remember a fact correctly? What, like, you wrote the zero in the wrong place?
I did every algorithm. Well, two things that I did wrong. One, when I said 9 times 7 is 63, in my head, I was thinking of the value 63. And you know what I wrote first? The 6. I was thinking 63. And so I put 6 and I carried the 3. And in my mind right now, I'm thinking, I wonder if that's why kids do that.
Oh, because they're thinking about 63.
They're thinking 63 and they write 60, carry the 3. I've never considered that before.
That's fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. What was the other thing you did wrong?
So then when I wrote the 0, whatever, moved on to the next step, I carried a 5. And you know what I did? I counted. I tapped it 5 times. Back to counting strategies.
So you didn't really do that wrong, but you found yourself doing something less sophisticated.
I found myself like reverting to I'm putting like thought behind, did I do that correctly? And I went back to counting strategies.
I think
Absolutely.
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So I got 3256 for my answer, and it would have been a big fat red X.
And no credit for all that you did right.
And
For
no understanding of what I did right or incorrectly.
no
Yeah.
understanding that. Yeah, your teacher would have just been like, try do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also without any relationships, you wouldn't have had an idea if you were reasonable or not.
Right.
All right. Well, I don't know if you guys were listening to the end of this episode because we kept talking. There's your bonus to the end of that episode. Standard algorithms stink because they don't build mathematicians. Woo! Thank you for listening and making math more figure-outable.
To learn even more, make sure you register for our free challenge at mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. You are not going to want to miss the evenings of May 15th through 17th, starting at 7 p.m. Central.
Math teaching, go register now. That's mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. Join us to make math more and more figure-outable. And if you can't join live, register and we'll send you access to the recordings. We'll see you there.